Hi, everyone. Welcome to the State of the Earth podcast from the Graduate School of Environment and Sustainability. Today, Sophie and I are thrilled to be joined by Tiago. Tiago is a senior lecturer in environmental law at the University of Exeter, where he has made significant strides by founding the Exeter Centre for Environmental Law. In addition to this, Tiago serves as the Associate Director for External Engagement at the Environment and Sustainability Institute. Tiago also holds a very impressive academic CV, with positions at Nova School of Law in Lisbon, a prestigious Fulbright Scholarship for research at the University of Louisville, and a higher education teaching certificate from Harvard University.
Tiago's teaching and research focus on critical areas such as environmental law and justice, climate change law, and sustainable business practices, often in collaboration with the business school and other disciplines. So in our conversation today, we'll explore the fascinating topic of UNESCO biospheres and how adaptiveness in regulation and governance can enhance implementation and enforcement, especially in times of change. We'll discuss the potential of making Cornwall a biosphere reserve and the intricate layers of local, national, and international policymaking that are essential for effective governance in these unique ecosystems.
Awesome. Thank you, Sophie. So before we go into today's discussion, can you just possibly share a little bit about your background and how you got into your research as you are now?
Sure. Hi, Mark. Hi, Sophie. Great to be here today. Thanks for inviting me. My background has always been in law, and more specifically in environmental law. So before I decided to move into academia, I already had been working as a lawyer, what in the UK is understood as a solicitor, for around 10 years. I've worked in law firms, the Lisbon City Council in Portugal, the Portuguese government as well, where I had the opportunity to advise ministers and contribute to changes and amendments in laws, regulation, policy in the areas of environment and the economy. And before I moved to the UK, I was already teaching at Nova University, as you said, in Lisbon. And I also had the opportunity to be involved in the presidency of the Council of the European Union, also in the areas of environmental impact assessment and hazardous waste.
That's really interesting. And moving on to the topic of today's discussion, before I start asking questions around this topic of UNESCO biospheres, how did you first come into contact with this topic?
Before I decided to do my PhD, I worked for the Portuguese government, and one of my responsibilities was to work on the coordination of the 12 biospheres in Portugal. So when I arrived in Cornwall, the very first day, I just looked around and wondered whether Cornwall was a UNESCO biosphere already. It isn't, but it still can be. And what exactly a UNESCO biosphere? It can be lots of different things, depending on where it is located in the world and who or which communities are involved. But they are understood as a special and world-class or world excellence places that serve as living laboratories and living hubs for sustainable development, which means that they are special places in the world where the balance between the human presence and the environment is continuously valued and enhanced. So by the end of 2024, there was 759 UNESCO biosphere reserves already in the world. They follow a specific framework, which is the World Network of Biosphere Reserves Statutory Framework. And there's also a specific document with technical guidelines to select and establish these biospheres.
I think from my background, when you think about different kind of protected areas for the environment, you don't necessarily consider the interaction of people being in these spaces. And I guess the fact that this is integrated within these biospheres, that's really interesting.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, you mentioned that when you first came to Cornwall on your first day, it looks around and envisaged possibly a UNESCO biosphere, but what do you think it would look like in practice in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly?
As I said, each biosphere is different, and UNESCO biospheres are what have local communities, local businesses, local organizations, and obviously the political power, because in the end, they need to be proposed by the local authority. But we know that biodiversity is in decline, not only here, but all over the globe. There are lots of interesting experiences from businesses, local NGOs, community groups in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly that could serve as excellent examples for a future application. So I would say that what we have in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly already serves as an application with all the different experiences, the investment in sustainable projects and businesses. For example, Cornwall is the first region after Greater London with the highest number of B Corps. So this means that businesses in Cornwall are interested in contributing to sustainability and supporting the enhancement of the environment and protecting biodiversity, but also supporting local communities. Again, this link between communities, human communities, and biodiversity and nature is something that is essential. And I believe that Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly already have a lot of what a UNESCO biosphere is supposed to be. Getting the accolade or the seal from UNESCO, it's just the beginning of a process, usually a 10-year process for a future reaccreditation. So each 10 years, there is a reaccreditation moment. And obviously, there must be an evolution here. The UNESCO biosphere brings lots of benefits to help a region become better or improve in these areas.
So I suppose it's not just about protecting the environment, but also thinking about envisioning what the future of that environment could look like and the protection that's put in place. But then also you mentioning the B Corp movement in Cornwall. So I guess it's also that business interaction with the natural environment and these kind of attitudes that people have in Cornwall towards nature.
I've been meeting lots of representatives of B Corps, and especially here in Cornwall. And what they do is really inspiring. They are very supportive of this idea of being a UNESCO biosphere here as well, and everything that could contribute to the enhancement of the environment and supporting biodiversity and supporting communities.
So what criteria does, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly currently meet to possibly be on its way to becoming a UNESCO biosphere?
As I mentioned, there is a specific statutory framework that is set by UNESCO for places and communities, because we're not only speaking of the places, but also of the communities that live in those places. The statutory framework sets the specific process, and it focuses a lot on the functions. The functions of these biosphere reserves are mainly focused on conservation, so contributing to the conservation of landscapes, ecosystems, species, and genetic variation. The second function would be the development, and here the idea is to foster economic and human development, which is socio-culturally and ecologically sustainable. And then there's the third function, which is logistic support, and this is related to research and monitoring. Supporting research, supporting the demonstration projects, environmental education and training, research and monitoring related to local, regional, national and global issues of conservation, and obviously of sustainable development. And then they are divided into 3 areas: a core area, which from my perspective would be, as the examples that exist in other places, would be based on the existing statutory designations that we already have. Let's think of the SSSIs, Ramsar, national landscapes, for example, the UNESCO heritage site as well. These could serve as core areas, which already have their specific rules. And then there are buffer zones where you could have human settlement, research, education, tourism, and then transitional areas where most of the activities can happen. This is what I would say, what is expected from UNESCO biospheres. And it's what I believe would happen if Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly would be designated as a UNESCO biosphere.
So if they were to be designated a UNESCO biosphere, what would this mean for Cornwall and Isles of Scilly in terms of benefits? What could they seek to receive through being part of this network? Did you say it was over 700 different reserves?
Exactly. What we have at the moment in biospheres, or again, as I said, different biospheres have different characteristics, and we are dealing with different realities. This one, which is the one that we know the best, and in fact is not a biosphere yet, would certainly get, first of all, an acknowledgement from an international organization recognizing it as a special and a place of excellence. And so a special corner in the world. And obviously, this would certainly bring pride to the region. But more than that, and it's also possible to speak about funding, or I would say economic development, because we have a UNESCO biosphere very close to us, North Devon, and the data that they have been sharing with us and other biospheres as well all over the world is that you can get much more in return than what you invest. Well, there are cases where you can get £20 back for each pound you invest for funding. It could have different origins, the return you get, but it could come from national funding, could come from international funding, could come from companies, from the private sector. There are lots of opportunities, but more than funding, I know that perhaps most people, when people think of benefits, everyone thinks of money coming here to support all possible projects. I think that the most important part of all this is integrating a world network of 759 different biospheres with different experiences, and clearly having these links to all those, so many already recognized as places, special places in the world. And they are very happy to share their experiences. And I've been working with many people in biosphere reserves. And one thing that they really want to do, and they do in a very regularly, is to share the best practices. So being part of this international group of so many different places and so many different communities and so many different cultures, where people can show what the best things that they have been doing, and it could be at different levels. It could be at business, sustainable business, it could be sustainable tourism, it could be public policy, it could be the work that is developed by NGOs, it could be so many things, research as well, education. There's so much happening in UNESCO biospheres all over the world, and clearly most of the people give some more value to perhaps World Heritage, because it's they're statutory and very strict frameworks, designations. In this case, these UNESCO biospheres are not as strict because they are based on a plan that is prepared, developed in collaboration with the community, with the public sector, the private sector, and it's set for 10 years. After those 10 years, and after monitoring, there is a reaccreditation process, and then the community can decide whether they want to keep going that way, or they could change, or they could adapt, and they could take different decisions. Or if they think they don't need the biosphere anymore, they can just drop it and decide, we don't want to be part of this. I doubt it, because being part of this huge network is something that, from my perspective, it's extremely invaluable.
Yeah, we've talked about all the fantastic benefits of the UNESCO biospheres, and there's all these ones already established all over the world. But, specifically, in Cornwall, what would you say are the next steps needed to get it underway? What would you recommend? Obviously, you've mentioned there are so many key stakeholders, the NGOs and communities, but what would you recommend specifically in Cornwall?
As I was saying, the steps that are needed to apply for a biosphere is to go through the local authority, which in our case would be the Cornwall Council. And then the Cornwall Council suggested to make the proposal or the application. It goes through Natural England, it goes through the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the government, and then the government proposes it to UNESCO. Then UNESCO takes the final decision. Sometimes they can suggest amendments, recommendations. If the community is happy with that, then they can adapt. But to go through that process, the local authority needs to be convinced and persuaded, right? The local authority has been very, very kind with us in the research we have been doing, and they have been attending and they have been supportive, and they are really interested in the conclusions and the results of the work we are doing. But obviously, there are lots of other things happening. And clearly, when we think of politics, there are always some priorities. And obviously, you need to, I would say that when you take a certain project, you need to be sure that project will be supported by the local community. So before trying to persuade the local authority, it's really important to involve the highest number possible of stakeholders and to explain people the benefits of it. And as I was saying, when people think of another designation, they always think, oh, these are new constraints, right? This will be more problems. This will make it more difficult to, for example, invest more on housing or on, I would say, mining or whatever, building new things. And the thing is that this is not true. A UNESCO biosphere, as I said before, is not the same as other statutory designations, because UNESCO biosphere is not a statutory designation. It's an adaptive and flexible and soft law designation that is attributed to a certain area, a certain place, and it is only what the people or the local community wants it to be. So all the rules and principles set for each biosphere are suggested by the local community. So it wouldn't be more than what we have from a legal, I would say, from a hard law perspective. So it wouldn't be a constraint, but certainly it would put more people together. It would help different organizations and different stakeholders have the opportunity to speak more to each other and take decisions in a collective way. And that's, I would say, again, it's the most positive and biggest benefits of it is putting people talking to each other locally and at an international level. So bringing the examples of other places, putting people here talking to each other, but also sharing with the world what the best things we do here. And in this project, we engaged with more than 30 organizations, and we expect to keep doing it more. We need time, and naturally, we'll need money, funding.
Are there any kind of key lessons learned from other existing biosphere reserves in terms of building this kind of community engagement, and any strategies that could be used to get local citizens actively involved, thinking about maybe things like citizens' assemblies or other forms of participatory engagement?
Yeah, we had a speaker who's the president of the Man and Biosphere Committee in Costa Rica. And Tanya, she brought a lot of great experiences in Costa Rica. Costa Rica is seen as one of the biggest examples in conservation. And they also combine really well or balance really well conservation with tourism. In most of the cases, obviously, shouldn't generalize, but in most of the cases, they're seen as a great example. So they invest a lot on strategies where local producers, small businesses are involved in the plan, in the areas of tourism, in the areas of sustainable development. They are taken or by the public authorities. So public participation and collaborative action is very much a thing in those processes. But obviously, then we have many other examples all over the world. We have many examples in Europe. We have examples in China. We have examples in the rest of Asia, in Africa, in the United States, in South America as well. There are small biospheres. There are huge biospheres. I remember that some days ago, I was talking to a colleague who was saying that they had been visiting the Mata Atlântica in Brazil, which is like a huge forest and not far from São Paulo, from the city of São Paulo. And there are so many differences, very small biospheres and huge biospheres, but obviously some of them work better than others. But I think that the examples of engaging small businesses, is engaging small communities, usually those who don't have a voice or are not understood to usually having a voice in decision making. I think that UNESCO Biospheres supports a lot those communities, and most of the times those are the ones that know the best what the environmental issues are. Those are the ones that have the traditional practices that have not been, I would say, touched by the heavy machinery yet, and then hopefully they won't. So it's not only conserving biodiversity and working on nature recovery, but it's also on trying to protect the traditional practices, local production. We discuss a lot here in the UK if it makes sense to bring food from miles and miles away when we have here the opportunity to support our communities and our farmers and help them do the work in a sustainable way. So it's a lot of this that happens in UNESCO Biospheres. Clearly, it's not the solution for all the problems, but it's helping putting people together and trying to share more the best practices all over the world. And clearly sharing more of what we are doing, the great things that we have been doing here in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly with the country and the rest of the world as well.
Yeah, so obviously, like you said, it's putting people at the forefront, but thinking about academic institutions like the University of Exeter. Before we started this podcast, you shared the Cornwall Isles of Scilly biosphere feasibility study. We will share these in the show notes for the benefit of the listeners. And what do you think is the role of research from different academic institutions similar to our university in establishing these biospheres, and what are the benefits they can bring?
The role of universities, I would say, is essential. And in most of the cases, most of the biosphere reserves that exist at the moment, or those that are designated, that have been designated in the last years, everything starts at university. Because universities have the scientists, and usually they're trying to find solutions to address the problems. And most of the issues that are related with biosphere reserves are linked to biodiversity. And we know that biodiversity is in decline. If we look at the Wildlife Trust States of Nature report or the National States of Nature report, and if we look at what's happening all over the world on the data shared by the IUCN, the Red List, we see that biodiversity is in high decline. And this is a way, biospheres are a way to support research and education. And that's the reason why many universities invest in doing this. So what we are doing at the moment is not something new. Other universities have been doing it all over the world, because this is an opportunity to improve the situation, to improve the state of nature, and also to bring people to be part of the solution. So human beings usually are seen as part of the problem when we think of biodiversity and decline, when we think of climate change. It's something that is out there, and it's part of the results of scientific studies. So if we have been part of the problem until now, why can't we start to be part of the solution? And local communities can be part of the solution if they are informed, if they are aware of the problems, and if they understand the benefits that the current designations can bring to them. I doubt that many people all over the world, or that a large number of people all over the world, understand why they have a specific statutory designation close to the place where they live. Why do we have a triple SI close to us? Why do we have a Ramsar site close to us? What as human beings and as members of the community, what are the benefits that they are getting from that? And I think it's up to the researchers and the people who work in education, so not only in the university, but also at schools, to help explain how important that those designations are for the communities, the local communities and human communities, because as human beings, we are part of the environment. And if we don't protect what we have, there will be results, right? And the nature will treat of us, right? It's something that is extremely important, and it's part of our job as researchers to inform. We do our research, but then we need to inform people and to make our conclusions easy to read and easy to communicate, to make the real impact, which is not only with like national or local governments, it's with the people, it's with the local communities. And that's where I think sometimes researchers and universities miss the point, because they can contribute to public policy or regulation or changes in laws. But it's really important to show the community how this is important, how these findings are relevant. The university is central here because it can do the push for all this, but obviously the university can't do it alone. It needs support from the rest of the organizations all around.
I have two questions based on that. Firstly, who are the different groups that need to be engaged to make sure that the reach is there, the capacity building, but then also the educational outreach to make sure that everyone feels that they're part of this initiative? Who are the kind of key stakeholders?
Clearly, the public sector, I've already mentioned, certainly the local authorities, the council, but also national agencies such as Natural England, because this needs to go through them, involving other organizations, public bodies such as Environment Agency, but then the trusts such as National Trust, which is not exactly public, but it has a lot of public service in their functions and missions. But then the representatives of SMEs, for example, in different sectors, in all the main sectors that we have in Cornwall. Let's think of farming, let's think of mining, let's think of fisheries, the B Corps as well, tourism. There's so much and so many organizations that should be involved. Well, we have been doing our work, so we've reached some of these organizations, but obviously with a small group of people, it's not easy to make it happen as fast as we wanted. And one thing that I may say is that usually these processes take like around 10 years for a certain region, a certain place to get the designation. It takes time because, again, you need to engage the highest number of people and the highest number of organizations to show that your application is strong, right? And it really represents the cloth of the society and the community. So it's something that takes time. I would divide it into the three different pillars of sustainable development. Certainly, those who do their work in the areas of environment, those who do their work in the social sector as well, and obviously people who contribute to create jobs and to help the economy and the local economy thrive. So all these people are important. I wouldn't say that it's difficult to say that we need key stakeholders. A UNESCO biosphere should have everyone because everyone is key.
That makes sense. And so far in our discussion, we've touched on the potential of a UNESCO biosphere status in helping to protect Cornwall's biodiversity and nature recovery. But thinking more about people and community, how does a biosphere reserve incorporate cultural heritage alongside environmental conservation?
A lot, because again, it's all about the balance between the human presence. So it's not protecting or trying to work on nature conservation, but it's also supporting cultural heritage conservation, because that has to do with identity. In fact, talking to other people with experience in biospheres all over the world, one of the aspects that have been mentioned as a strength of Cornwall is the identity and having a language. We have Cornish here, and that's an additional point because it has a lot to do with the people, with the communities, and you won't find Cornish in other place in the world. So it's something that is very much identitarian of the region. If we think of the cultural heritage, another aspect that having the UNESCO World Heritage Site here, this is another added value that we would have as a candidate, because UNESCO has already recognized the relevance of a large part of the region. So it makes it easier to recognize the rest of it. And I've been working in the area of adaptive legal frameworks, trying to find ways to make the current statutory designations in the UK follow and try to respond faster to change and to uncertainty and to unpredictable phenomena and events. And this is something that is really complicated. So I've been talking to different public agencies and bodies in the area, and they are also really concerned about this, not only in the environmental area, not only in the area of nature conservation, but also in the areas of cultural heritage, because the designations, the statutory designations, have been written and adopted at a certain moment. And after 10 years, things are completely different. And phenomena such as sea level rise can affect and impact certain values of cultural heritage. And sometimes you cannot take decisions because the law doesn't, or the regulation doesn't let you do it. So at the end, the regulation that is in force is not protecting that value that they wanted to originally, right? So it's really complicated to find ways of adaptiveness here. And that's the reason why we are now working on these adaptive characteristics, and will try to contribute to change in national regulation and policy. But UNESCO biospheres are an example of this, because they can give us examples of soft law instruments that could be embedded in regulation and could give this flexibility to decision making and to the implementation of law and regulation.
To get these biospheres, it takes a long time, obviously 10 years, and there's so many stakeholders involved in establishing this. But what are the challenges or pinch points? What would be the hardest part of establishing these biospheres? Is there any particularly lengthy process in that sort of way of getting it established?
I would say that what is lengthy is this first stage, putting the community together and showing how important this could be, and how game changer this could be for the region. And obviously getting funded is also an issue, and that would be another challenge. But usually there are many biospheres are funded, at least in a part, by lotteries. Obviously they're putting together different organizations and different stakeholders. They also try to apply for a national funding opportunities, such as from DEFRA or national landscapes. So there are lots of opportunities in funding, but obviously this must be part of the plan. I would say the first stage is the most difficult one, which is trying to put all the people together and the highest number of people and organizations and community representatives together to persuade the local authority. And then it's a process that, if the application is strong, then it's a process that it's the shortest one. There could be challenges afterwards, because the huge challenge is, what are we going to do after we get that designation, right? It's implementing the plan that has been adopted, but the big challenge is to keep those different community representatives or different organizations together, because obviously, well, we have been having some conversations with different people, and some people say we don't have much time. Clearly, time is money, right? So we don't have much time. We don't have, like, our organization doesn't have as many people as we wanted. And sometimes it's difficult for one person to be in those meetings. But if we show people that's the really important moment when you will be going to be part of the decision, and you'll take the decision, and things can change and change for good if you are part of that decision. I think that if people have that idea and understand that, I think things will be much different. But obviously, there are lots of challenges. There is this initial challenge, which is trying to put people together, convince a local authority. Then there's the second huge challenge, which is keeping it working and keeping people motivated. But obviously, it has to do with the people who lead the project, the people who are involved. The public bodies also need to be really active and motivated as well. For example, in the case of North Devon, they created a foundation to manage the biosphere, and it's up to them to keep everyone motivated and stick to the plan. So that's the thing. But yeah, nothing is easy.
Sounds like a big task for them. So finally, given all the potential benefits and challenges discussed, what's your ultimate vision for Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly as a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve? And how do you believe it will transform the relationships between people and the environment in the region for generations to come?
That's a 100 million question. Yeah, I think my opinion is something that wouldn't have a huge value. I think people's opinion would be most relevant here. I think that the vision has to do with what the community wants to do with a UNESCO biosphere. Again, people won't be forced to do anything by UNESCO. It's the people who want to do something and keep this precious place in the world, and this is an opportunity to maintain that and to enhance the positive aspects of this region. And I think that keeping working in these great projects on nature recovery, on protecting biodiversity, on trying to change this pathway of decline in biodiversity, but also giving people more opportunities to be part of decisions with, for example, more consultations, but also something that has been done imbued in the last years. I don't know if you've heard the climate juries, giving people the opportunity to sit together and in some pieces of flip chart paper, just write how they see the future of the place where they live in 10 years. It's something really important. Obviously, there will be different opinions, in some cases, extremely different opinions. But obviously, it's really important to listen to everyone, or to the highest number of people, to make sure that we are going on the right track. But the right track is not the same for everyone. But I think that the sustainable development still, obviously, there are different perspectives on sustainable development. There are people who say that the narrative should be changed and that we should think of new ways and new concepts. I believe that also UNESCO biospheres have been adapting to the new documents and statements that they have been adopting are very much focused on resilience, on adaptation, on tackling climate change, but without a really important aspect, which is making sure that we still protect our natural values, and that at the same time we respect the people who live close to those natural values, and that human beings and nature can live together without hurting each other. And that's perhaps the vision that I would be expecting from decision makers and the community in the future of Cornwall. We'll see. Hopefully, that's what will happen.
It sounds like a wonderful call to action.
We'll see. I don't know.
That's a wrap of the questions. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tiago. I really have enjoyed this conversation, learning about the potential for Cornwall Isles of Scilly to become a UNESCO biosphere, and learning about all the different stakeholders and how much time it will take and all these sort of different factors. And I really hope the listeners have enjoyed hearing our conversations today. Thank you again, Tiago, and thank you to all our listeners for joining, and we'll catch you all in the next one.